you could open up with me to Mark chapter 5. And I want to begin reading at verse 22. And then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, so that she may be well and live." And he went with him. And a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, "If I touch even his garments, I will be made well." And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving him in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." The Bible is filled with what I would call impossible situations or hopeless situations. That there are storms, needs, deaths, situations that humanly, they seem like there's no answer, there's no hope, they're impossible. But time and time again, they are handled with ease by the power of God. In Mark's Gospel, there are several of those impossible situations. That there's a storm, there's a man filled with demons, and then a dead little girl. And Jesus steps into each of these situations, and he proves that he is more than capable of handling whatever happens. One truth that we see over and over in the pages of the Bible is the truth that God is more than enough for every situation, including yours. That there are no hopeless, helpless, impossible predicaments with the Lord. Your situation is not hopeless. Your storm is not hopeless. Your sin is not hopeless. Your sickness is not hopeless. Your lost loved ones are not hopeless. Nothing is hopeless with the Lord. And in our text, Jesus is on his way to heal the daughter of a man named Jairus. And on the way there, he's surrounded and boxed in by a crowd of people. And in the crowd, there's this poor, weak, timid, dying woman who reaches out and touches Jesus. And when she touched the Lord, her life was instantly and completely and permanently transformed. One encounter with the Lord, it changes everything. So this morning, let's consider this poor woman and her situation. Just maybe her story can help us when we face those hopeless situations in our lives. Verse 25 is where I would like to pick up, and verse 26. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. We're told that she suffered from a discharge of blood. This literally means that she was hemorrhaging or bleeding from somewhere in her body. Whatever caused this hemorrhage, she was a very, very sick woman. The verb tense indicates that it was a continual flow of blood. A constant flow of blood would have caused unbelievable suffering. And if we could, let's for a moment examine some of the areas where she suffered. Her physical distress. From constant blood loss, she could have been weak and anemic. She could have been cyanotic, which means that her skin would have been bluish, purplish from a lack of oxygen. She could have suffered from anxiety, profuse sweating, shallow breathing, dizziness, confusion, chest pain, low blood pressure, rapid heart rate. She would have had no energy at all. And any effort at anything would have worn her out. Her disease was like a tormentor, constantly beating her down day by day. And we're also told that she tried many remedies and tried all of the physicians of her day, and we're told that she suffered much under their care. If you read some of the early Jewish writings of the Talmud, you'll see that they have some really weird or strange remedies for sicknesses. One in particular that she probably would have tried was, and forgive me for the crassness, but she would have boiled an ear of corn and put it in a particular place on a donkey after feeding the donkey certain herbs. And once she was able to retrieve the ear of corn from a certain place, she was then to eat the ear of corn. And if she was not healed, it was because she did it wrong and she needed to start from step one. So when the Bible says that she suffered much under their care, this is what it's referring to. We can call them quack doctors today. Not only was she suffering from a physical distress, though, she had a social distress as well. And more than likely, she wasn't married, because through simple contact, any contact with all, she would have defiled her husband. If she had ever been married, her husband would have probably divorced her. She couldn't work around others because of the danger of defilement. So this reduces her to a life of begging for scraps and life on the fringes, life from a distance. And to those who would have been around her, or knew her, that she was no better than a leper. So not only did she suffer from physical distress and social distress, but more than likely she also suffered from emotional distress. Since the Bible says that she had been this way for 12 years. Consider the average lifespan in those days. So it was safe to assume that she'd probably been this way since puberty. She's lived her whole life moving from one rejection to another rejection. She's lonely, she's isolated, she's desperate. And probably also suffered from the religious distress, which I imagine wouldn't be any different than our day. But under the law, this poor woman was to be considered unclean. Anything or anyone that she touched or came into contact with was considered unclean. And as a result, she could not mingle with other people, couldn't socialize with other people. It couldn't function within the body of religious worship with other people. And anyone who came into contact with her was considered ceremonially defiled. So that means she couldn't worship in the woman's court in the temple because she was unclean. And that fits in with, or in our day, with those who suffer from mental illness, or drug addiction, or homosexuality. God forbid we allow them to worship with us. And more than likely she suffered from some financial distress because the Bible tells us that she spent all that she had. The doctors and their useless remedies had not helped her in one bit whatsoever. All they did was drain her bank account. She had been left penniless and destitute with no husband, no children to look after her. And she was in complete and utter constant discomfort. After years of pain and worthless doctors and useless remedies and shattered dreams, she's reached a place where she knows that she's living under a death sentence. She's not going to get any better. She knows that she'll die from this disease if nothing changes. Her life is literally draining out of her body, little by little, day by day, moment by moment. She is dying. I wonder, how many of us can identify with this woman? And maybe you don't have the same illness that she's suffering from, but like her, you're filled with suffering and sorrow and doubt and question. This nameless, suffering woman. She's a picture of two types of people. First, she's a picture of every person who does not know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. The unsaved are defiled and they have a blood disease. They inherit this disease from Adam. And this condition has plagued the lost person ever since they were born. Romans chapter 5, verse 12. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. It's a condition that the sinner can't make better or change on their own. In Romans 3:23 says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Many people spend their entire lives searching for meaning and help for their condition. But instead of getting better, they only get worse. Their hearts get harder, and they become more deeply rooted in their sins. And all efforts at self-improvement, self-help, and religion, they don't improve their condition. And this poor woman is in sad shape, but she wasn't nearly as bad off as the unsaved. She was nowhere near as bad off as those who are outside of Jesus Christ. She's merely headed to the grave. The unsaved, they're headed to an eternity in hell. The second person that she's like is the believer who's laboring under a heavy burden. You've tried everything in your power to get better. You've tried everything you know to fix your situation. You've read all the books. You've talked to all the pastors, all the preachers, all the teachers, all the doctors, all the psychologists. You've gotten advice from all the best resources, but you still know better. Your life is as messed up as it ever was. Beloved, if that describes you, then keep listening. And maybe that the Lord has some help for you in your heart today. In verses 27, 28, we see that she devises a plan. And verse 27 says, she had heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, if I touch even his garment, I will be made well. This hopeless and broken woman, she devised this plan. She formulated a plan to meet Christ. Somewhere, some way, somehow, she heard about Jesus. Maybe she heard how he healed the leper in Mark chapter 1, verses 40, 41, 42. Maybe she heard about that demon-possessed man across the lake, that Jesus had delivered all of these demons. Maybe some other poor soul who lived on the fringes of society had told her that they were healed by Jesus Christ. Whatever it was, she heard that there was power in his touch. She heard about Jesus and she knew that she had to press through the crowd and get to him. And she realizes that Jesus is her only hope. She believed with all of her heart that if she could just get to him, she would be made whole. She would be healed. So she pushes through, elbows through the crowd of people, which I find very interesting because now she's causing everyone else to become ceremonially unclean. And she's taking a great risk. Consider that for a moment. If she were recognized by the crowd, more than likely she would either face public humiliation or death. A crowd like that would see her and get worked up, get riled up, and then turn to beat her or stone her. But for her, this is a risk worth taking. She believed with all of her heart that Jesus would heal her. Because the nature of her disease, it would have taken every amount of energy that she had. It would have drained everything out of her just to get out of bed and to struggle through a crowd to get to Jesus. She was extremely desperate. Have you been there? Have you been at that point? Where nothing makes sense. None of these answers that everyone else has makes any sense. Is it your sin that you're struggling with? Is it your job? Is it your family members? Friends? Have you been at this point where you realize that nothing else is going to work? Nothing but Jesus Christ. Have you come to understand that he is the only hope for humanity? That he is the only hope for you? Beloved, the sooner we come to realize that and recognize that Jesus is the only hope that we have, the sooner we get the help that we need. Turn with me to Matthew chapter 11. Jesus makes an offer. And he says, come to me, all who are tired, all who are weak, all who are working and struggling to make life better. And come to me, everyone who has their hands to the plow when you're trying to create this life that makes sense. Come to me. When life is too much, when it's too heavy, when there's such a burden, come to me, Jesus says, and I'll give you rest. I will give you rest. Those are the words of Jesus. listen to the words of God. Why? Why should we carry our burdens one more step? In Hebrews chapter 4, he says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need." The last couple of weeks we've been talking about how great a Savior we have. One who is not far off, but a Savior that has drawn near to us. A Savior that knows us, recognizes us, feels our pain, understands what we are going through. A Savior who has been here. Wherever you are, He's been there. So He knows us, and He recognizes our hearts. He recognizes our pains. Why would we turn anywhere else? The gods of this world, they don't work. They fix for a moment. But yet they satisfy for a moment. They don't gratify. The gods of this world, they don't work. They make things worse. Alcohol. I can't deal with what's going on, so I got to toss a couple back. Drugs. I need an escape. And with all the talk of marijuana today and legalizing marijuana, here's the issue. Here is the issue. It's becoming a god. I'll let doctors and everyone else on Facebook and Instagram and social media, you make the arguments about whether or not it's dangerous physically. You have that conversation. I'd rather have a higher conversation, one that goes past the physical. The issue is that we turn to substances rather than turning to God. We look for an escape. Right? We want a way out. I can't handle what's happening, so you know what? This is going to give me that moment of peace, that moment of solace. And it never comes. You can get as high as you want, but you will still remain in that situation. If we would turn to the Word of God and do what it says, and that is turn to Christ in our situations, in our issues. If we would just humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God so that at the proper time He may exalt you. May we would cast all of our anxiety on Him because He cares. You cannot get high enough or drunk enough to escape your situation. It's still there. The only issue is now, the next day, you have to face it with a headache. You thought it was tough the first time. But this woman, she's realized something that a lot of us need to realize. That we don't have to carry this burden of life. Not one more step. But why should we continue to fight this losing battle for one more moment? Why should we have to live defeated one more day? You don't have to. Get to Jesus. Get to Jesus. Press through the crowd of all the solutions of this world. He can and will help. When she was close enough to touch Jesus, she reached out and touched the hem of His garment. And instantly, she received what none of the doctors could give to her. She was healed. Instantly, she felt the change in her body. She knew that she was a completely different woman now. And as soon as she touches Jesus, Jesus knows what happens. But He asks this question in verse 30. Who touched my garments? And of course, there's dozens of people touching him and bumping into him and pushing and shoving. And then his brilliant disciples go on to say in verse 31, what are you talking about, Jesus? What do you mean, who touched you? There's a lot of people around. I have to be honest. I probably would have been one of those guys. What do you mean, who touched you? Everybody's touching you. There's a whole lot of people standing around us, and you're asking who's touching you? But her touch was different. It was a touch that was accompanied with faith. Jesus could have let her walk away with the physical healing, but he wanted to give her more than physical healing. He wanted to move beyond the natural into the supernatural. He wanted to save her soul. When Jesus spoke to this woman, she falls before him in fear. She bowed at his feet and confessed everything to him. This is a public, outward acknowledgement of what had happened in her heart. She was different, and she wasn't ashamed to tell others about it. She knew that she had been made whole. She knew that she had been made brand new, and she wanted everyone else to hear. She didn't care who was around. Jesus, he wanted to move past her physical need and address the eternal need. I can only imagine that at this moment, in that woman's mind, there was no crowd. She had lost all perspective of everything else. To her, it was just her and Jesus. The business of the universe was put on hold for that moment, and Jesus turns to her, gives all of his attention to her. Her need was more important than anything else to Jesus. Could you imagine that? This woman, this castaway, this throwaway, this uncared for person, this unwanted human, caught the eye of God because she exercised simple, childlike faith. The kids in my class always ask me, what's the definition of faith? It's very simple, extremely simple. To place all your trust, all your care in Christ. It really is that simple. Just as you guys are exercising faith in these pews that you're sitting in. I've said it before, nobody goes under the pew and looks to see whether or not the screws or nails are rusty. You just plop down. You just sit. Without a thought, without a care in the world. That's faith. She placed all of her faith in Jesus. Every single ounce, knowing that he would make her whole. God, the very God who holds and controls the path of every atom and every molecule in this universe, has time for you when you call on him in faith, just as he had time for her. And his words to her in verse 34, Mark chapter 5. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." This confirms that what she knew and what she thought was absolutely true. He calls her daughter. They are now in a completely different relationship. Daughter. It's a title of tenderness. It's a title, a designation of peace, a label of acceptance. One moment she was an outcast on the fringes of society. The next moment she is now in the family of God. She got a whole lot more than she bargained for that day. She thought that she was coming to get fixed physically. God has something else in mind. And then he tells her, go in peace. His words to her let her know that she has done the right thing in coming to him and touching him, that her faith was placed in the right place. She was well, and she knew it. And then Jesus' final words to her, your faith has made you well. She experienced a healing. Not because she touched his garment. Not because she made the phone call and got that little piece of cloth that someone is selling on television. Not because she said the right thing or did the right thing. There is no formula here for salvation. Let's make that very clear. Your faith has made you well. She experienced healing because her faith touched the power of God. In the crowd of life, there are many people with the physical and spiritual and emotional needs. But in our text, there's only one way that was changed. Many of you have needs and wants and questions. And by the way, God is big enough to handle your question. And your needs and wants and questions, they can all be met. But are you turning to the marketplace? Are you turning to the crowd of life for your answers? See, many people in that crowd, they brushed up against Jesus. But only one of them was transformed. This poor and rejected woman was touched by Jesus because she reached out and touched him with faith, believing that nothing but Jesus could make her whole. And Jesus does more than attend to her physical needs. He attends to her spiritual needs. I want to leave you with this question. I want you to truly wrestle with it. How often do we brush up against Jesus in the crowd of solutions when we're hurting or in need? Are we willing to be like this woman and completely trust Jesus when he says to her, your faith has made you whole? For it is by faith that we are saved, not any works of our own.